What if the Amazon rainforest was never wild to begin with? What if beneath the trees there were once cities, roads, entire civilizations, hidden for thousands of years, and only now we're starting to see them again? The green illusion. What if the world's largest rainforest is not as natural as it seems? What if beneath the endless green canopy, hidden under layers of soil, roots, and time, there are cities? Not small settlements, not temporary shelters, but vast, organized, engineered civilizations, lost and forgotten for thousands of years. For centuries, the Amazon was believed to be untouched, a wild, untamed place where nature ruled and humans barely survived. A place too harsh, too unpredictable to support complex societies. That was the story, and for a long time, no one questioned it. An early assumption. Early explorers entered the Amazon and saw only jungle. Endless trees, thick vegetation, rivers winding through silence. There were no visible cities, no towering structures, no monuments rising above the land. So the conclusion seemed obvious. Nothing was there. But there was a problem. The jungle does not preserve like stone deserts or dry landscapes. It grows, it consumes, it erases. Anything left behind is slowly reclaimed, hidden, layer by layer, until it becomes invisible. The first clues. Long before modern technology, there were whispers, stories from early travelers who claimed to have seen something unusual, large settlements, connected communities, people living in ways that did not match the idea of a primitive jungle. But these accounts were dismissed, considered exaggerations, misinterpretations, or myths. Because without physical evidence, they were easy to ignore. And so, the idea of a complex Amazon civilization faded into the background, almost forgotten. A hidden pattern. But over time, small pieces began to appear, strange shapes in the earth, visible only from above, perfect circles, squares, geometric formations, too precise to be natural. These formations, now known as geoglyphs, began to challenge the old assumptions, because nature does not draw perfect geometry. People do. Seeing the invisible. Everything changed when we started looking at the earth differently, from above, using modern tools that could see through the forest. One of those tools was called LiDAR, a technology that uses laser pulses to map the ground beneath dense vegetation. And when scientists used it in the Amazon, they didn't just find a few structures. They found networks, entire landscapes that had been shaped by human hands. The cities beneath the trees. Hidden beneath the jungle were the remains of something extraordinary, large settlements connected by straight roads, raised platforms, defensive structures, systems that suggested planning, organization, design. This was not random. This was not temporary. This was a civilization, one that had been invisible for centuries, not because it didn't exist, but because it was covered. A different kind of civilization. What made this discovery even more surprising was how these people lived. They did not build towering stone monuments like those in Egypt or massive temples like those in Mesoamerica. Instead, they worked with the environment, shaping the land rather than dominating it, creating fertile soil in places where farming should have been impossible, building a system that blended with nature instead of standing above it. The Black Earth Mystery. One of the most fascinating discoveries was something called terra preta, dark, rich, man-made soil, far more fertile than the natural soil of the Amazon. And it wasn't created by accident. It was engineered, a sign of knowledge, understanding, and long-term planning. Because creating soil like that takes time, effort, and intention. Which means these people were not just surviving, they were thriving, rethinking the past. If large civilizations existed in the Amazon, then something changes, our understanding of history. Because for centuries, we believed this region could not support complexity. But now, the evidence suggests the opposite, that millions of people may have lived there, in organized societies, with systems, knowledge, and structure. The disappearance. And then they were gone. No clear record, no obvious explanation, just silence. The jungle remained, but the people, the cities, the system disappeared. What happened? Did disease spread after contact with outsiders? Did environmental changes disrupt everything? Or did the civilization collapse slowly, over time, leaving behind only traces that the forest would eventually hide?
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
The roads no one expected. As more of the jungle was scanned, something even more surprising appeared. Straight lines cutting through the forest, long, perfectly aligned roads connecting one settlement to another. Not random paths, but organized routes suggesting planning, direction, purpose. Some of these roads stretched for kilometers, too straight, too consistent to be accidental. And in a place as dense as the Amazon, building something like that would require coordination, labor, and a clear vision. This was not survival. This was infrastructure. A system, not just cities. What emerged from the data was not just isolated settlements, but a network. Multiple communities linked together, working as part of a larger system, like pieces of something connected, each with its own role, each part of a bigger design. This changes everything, because a single city can exist alone, but a network means communication, organization, shared knowledge. It means civilization on a scale we did not expect, hidden in plain sight. And yet, this entire system remained hidden for centuries, not in a remote corner of the world, but in one of the most studied regions on Earth, the Amazon. It was always there, just beneath the surface, covered, protected, and concealed by the very environment it once worked with. The jungle that erased history. The rainforest does not preserve history. It transforms it. Wood decays, stone sinks, paths disappear, and over time, everything blends back into the land. Unlike deserts where ruins remain visible for thousands of years, the jungle hides everything, completely. Which means what we see today is not what existed. It is only what survived being hidden. A civilization we misunderstood. For generations, the idea of advanced societies in the Amazon was rejected because it didn't fit the narrative. The belief was simple: dense jungle equals small tribes, limited resources equals limited development. But that assumption was based on what we could see, not on what was actually there. And now we are beginning to realize that we may have misunderstood an entire region of human history. Living with the forest. What makes this civilization unique is not just that it existed, but how it existed. Instead of clearing the forest completely, they shaped it, managed it, worked with it, creating an environment that could support large populations without destroying the ecosystem. This was not domination, it was balance, a different kind of advancement. The scale we are only starting to see. The more we explore, the more we discover, and each discovery suggests something bigger, that this was not a small phenomenon, but something widespread, possibly extending across large parts of the Amazon, multiple regions, multiple systems, all connected in ways we are only beginning to understand. And if that is true, then this may have been one of the largest civilizations in the ancient world, hidden in the last place we expected. Why was it forgotten? A question begins to form. If something this large existed, how could it be forgotten? How could it disappear so completely that for centuries no one knew it was there? The answer may not be simple. It may not be one event, but many. Disease, climate shifts, disruption, or something else entirely, something we do not yet fully understand. A fragile system. Even the most advanced systems can be fragile. They depend on balance, on stability, on conditions that allow them to function. And when those conditions change, the system begins to weaken, slowly, until it can no longer sustain itself. And when that happens, collapse is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, gradual, almost invisible. The bigger question. And now a larger question begins to emerge. If a civilization like this could exist and disappear without leaving obvious traces, then what else might have existed? What other stories are still hidden, not just in the Amazon, but around the world, waiting beneath layers of time?
For a long time, we believed the Amazon rainforest was completely natural, a place untouched by human hands. But what if that idea is not entirely true? What if parts of the forest were shaped, designed, managed by the very civilization we are only now beginning to uncover? Because recent studies suggest something unexpected. Large areas of the Amazon may not be purely wild. They may be partly engineered. A living system. Instead of building over nature, this civilization may have done something different. They may have built within it, guiding the growth of the forest, planting useful species, creating environments that supported both people and nature. Over generations, this would not look like construction, it would look like wilderness. But beneath that appearance, there would be design, a system hidden in plain sight. Trees that tell a story. When scientists began studying the forest more closely, they noticed something unusual. Certain types of trees appear more frequently in specific areas. Fruit-bearing trees, useful plants, arranged in patterns that suggest intention, not randomness. It is as if the forest itself was shaped, guided over time by people who understood it deeply. Knowledge we don't fully understand. To manage a system like this would require knowledge, not just of survival, but of ecology, soil, growth cycles, balance. A deep understanding of how nature works and how to work with it. This is not primitive thinking. This is complex, careful, intentional. A different definition of advanced. When we think of advanced civilizations, we imagine stone cities, metal structures, visible power. But what if advancement can take a different form? What if a civilization becomes advanced not by dominating nature, but by blending into it so completely that it becomes invisible? Not because it is simple, but because it is refined. The disappearance revisited. Now the mystery deepens, because if this civilization was integrated with the forest, then its disappearance would not leave ruins in the way we expect. It would fade, gradually, as nature continued, absorbing everything until nothing remained except the forest itself. A forest that, quietly, still carries traces of what once was. A hidden legacy. If this is true, then the Amazon is not just a rainforest, it is a legacy a living record of a civilization that learned to exist differently, not above the land, but within it. And even now, we walk through it without fully realizing what we are standing on. What else are we missing? This leads to a deeper thought. If something this large, this complex, could remain hidden for so long, then what else are we not seeing? What other parts of history are still waiting, not because they are impossible, but because we are not looking in the right way? Changing the way we see. Perhaps the biggest discovery is not the civilization itself, but the realization that our perspective can be limited, that what we believe to be true is sometimes based on incomplete information, and when new evidence appears, the entire picture can change. The Amazon today. Today, the Amazon still stands, vast, complex, alive. But now, we see it differently, not just as wilderness, but as something layered, something that may hold the quiet remains of a forgotten world, hidden, not by distance, but by time.
A civilization that chose to disappear. Most civilizations in history leave something behind: stone monuments, ruins, written records, something visible. But this one, if it truly existed as we now believe, chose a different path. Or perhaps it didn't choose at all. Perhaps its design was never meant to last in the way we expect. Because if you build within nature, your legacy does not stand apart from it. It becomes part of it. And when time passes, it does not collapse, it dissolves. The idea of invisible progress. We often measure progress by what we can see: height, size, complexity of structures. But what if there is another form of progress, one that is not visible from a distance, one that does not seek to stand out, but to blend in perfectly, so perfectly that it disappears, not because it failed, but because it succeeded? A world we might not recognize. Imagine walking through the Amazon thousands of years ago. You might not see towering cities. You might not recognize it as a civilization at all. And yet, beneath your feet, around you, there would be systems, structures, designs, hidden within the natural world. A civilization that does not look like one. The limits of expectation. Sometimes we fail to see something, not because it is hidden, but because it does not match what we expect to find. We search for stone, we search for walls, we search for monuments. But what if the most advanced systems leave none of those things behind? Then we could walk through them, study them, even live within them without realizing what they are. The Amazon as a memory. If the forest itself was shaped, if it carries patterns that were guided by human hands, then the Amazon is not just an environment, it is a memory, a living memory, not written in language, but in growth, in soil, in distribution of life, a memory that does not speak, but exists. The silence of lost knowledge. There is something unusual about knowledge that disappears. It does not leave noise behind. It leaves silence, a gap, a sense that something is missing, but without knowing exactly what. And perhaps this is what we are beginning to feel now, looking at the Amazon. Not just curiosity, but a quiet realization
that something important may have been forgotten. Rethinking human history. If civilizations like this existed, then history becomes less certain, less linear, more complex. Instead of a simple progression from primitive to advanced, it becomes something else. A series of different paths, different ways of living, different forms of knowledge, some visible, some hidden. The question that expands. And once that possibility exists, it does not stay contained, because the question grows. If the Amazon held something like this, what about other regions, other forests, other landscapes, other places where nature can hide what once existed? The question does not end, it expands. What we have yet to see. There are still places on Earth that remain largely unexplored, not because they are unreachable, but because they are difficult, dense, complex, and within those places, there may be more structures, more patterns, more evidence waiting quietly, not lost, just unseen. A different kind of legacy. Most civilizations leave behind ruins, but this one, if it truly existed in this way, left behind something else. A system that continues, a landscape that still functions, a balance that still exists, even without those who created it.
And so, the Amazon remains vast, endless, silent. A place that seems wild, untouched. But now, we see it differently. Not just as a forest, but as something deeper, something layered, something that may be remembering. Because if a civilization once lived here, if it shaped the land, guided the growth, built its world within the forest itself, that it never truly disappeared. It changed form. Its cities became soil. Its roads became roots. Its knowledge became patterns hidden in the trees. And even now, as the wind moves through the canopy, as rivers continue their quiet paths, as life grows and grows again, something remains. Not visible, but present. And maybe that is the real mystery. Not what was lost, but what is still here. Unseen, unrecognized, waiting. So the next time you look at the Amazon, don't just see a forest. See the possibility that beneath every tree, beneath every layer of earth, there is a story. Not gone, just hidden.